This is Pat's Probe on the Our Lads Football Network, as the New England Patriots have been officially eliminated from postseason play as we enter Week 16 of the NFL season. So there's a lot to talk about. Let's get right to it. Evan Lazar, clnsmedia.com. There's a lot to go over now that the Patriots are officially out of it, Evan, and especially with Cam Newton, whether it's we'll talk about the next couple of games, the off season, next season, and so forth. But first things first is the just initial feeling that you have and the fans have with being eliminated from the postseason for the first time in a long time.
Well, I wish I could sit here and say that the fan base is handling it well, but that would be an absolute lie. I think the biggest thing that Patriots fans were not expecting necessarily was the drop off on both offense and defense that we've seen from 2019 to 2020. We knew that there were, issues. We knew that there were departures, obviously with Tom Brady and the opt-outs and guys that left in free agency, and there was a lot of roster turnover. But I think that you're just really used to the Patriots sort of plugging and playing new guys in those spots on defense and still coming out the other end as a pretty solid unit. And that just hasn't necessarily been the case. It's kind of come and gone this year. There have been times where the defense has looked really good. They played very well against Baltimore. They played very well against Arizona and Kyler Murray. And then obviously on Sunday, they give up 250 rushing yards to the Miami Dolphins, who really weren't threatening them a whole lot with downfield passing.
Yeah, what was up with that? Because that's definitely something we should talk about. Because we thought that, okay, if the Patriots is a good matchup, the rookie quarterback deal, so that, and with Parker out and Gesicki out, their top two passing options. Well, the only way Miami is going to be able to score in this game, you figured, is somehow if they ran the football, which they have not done a very good job of this season. They do not have a very good offensive line, or the Patriots give them good field position, turnovers, things of that nature. What happened? 250. I mean, where did all those rushing yards come from? I'm sure it had nothing to do with scheme. So the talent is just not there.
Yeah, that's a really, when you look at the Rams game, the Rams ran for, I think it was 180 something, 186 maybe against the Patriots in that game on last Thursday night. I felt like that was really a scheme thing. Sean McVay had a great game plan to go up against the Patriots. He went against his tendencies. He did some different things and threw some wrinkles at Bill Belichick. And Bill Belichick said as much after the game in the post-game handshake. He said, "You had a great plan. Good job." This week against Miami, it was really just hat on a hat, their guys beating the Patriots guys at the point of attack. And I know there's just a couple of examples that we pulled that we can talk about.
Absolutely.
But for the most part, it was just a situation where the Patriots, for whatever reason, went into this game thinking that they were going to play, 6 guys, maybe 7 guys in the box and get away with it against Miami because they didn't really respect Miami's offensive line or its running backs to be able to win those matchups against the Patriots' lighter boxes. And the Pats all game long were willing to go to those lighter boxes to play a little bit more speed on the field. And the Miami Dolphins just ran it right down their throats. And it felt like the Patriots tried to adjust at times, but really not anything considerable in terms of adjustments. And it was a head-scratching sort of game plan and just play calling on the defensive side of the ball, certainly, where you just kind of say to yourself, I mean, at what point in time do you put an extra linebacker out there? Do you put an extra defensive lineman out there? Or do you put 8 in the box and you say, you're not going to be able to run the ball. We're going to force the ball to, over the top with Tua. And they just never made the Dolphins feel like they had to do that.
All right. Well, let's take a look at this one clip. I've already shown it, but we'll show it a few more times. This is when the edge is just not set properly. Winovich looked like he was, I don't know who the right tackle was there for the Dolphins, but he basically just pushes Winovich aside. I mean, with one arm, about 3 yards down the field. That's not setting the edge. So talk about this play.
Right. So I think one of the biggest problems that we're seeing with the Patriots run defense all year long is setting the edge of the defense and dealing with off tackle runs. The Patriots this season right now are dead last in the EPA success rate against outside runs. They're also 31st in yards per carry on off tackle runs. So that's a big concern for this team in the offseason. I would say even up there with, in terms of being better on offense next year is definitely setting the edge. So on that particular play, Winovich has the edge. He gets manhandled by Robert Hunt, the rookie there by the Miami Dolphins, the right tackle. And there was a nice little scheme. They get a little crack block in there to get the linebacker, who's actually a safety, Kyle Duggar, sealed inside. That's how they get the edge. But Winovich giving up that much ground to the right tackle, that's just not an effort that this coaching staff or any coaching staff really is going to put up with from their edge defender. And it speaks to me volumes not only about Winovich's future in New England, but also just their inconsistencies and their struggles with the edge of the defense at the end of the line. Winovich is a really good sub rusher. He's a really good pass rusher. He's a guy that can really get after the quarterback. But this Patriots defense wants to be able to set the edge firmly, and he just hasn't really stepped up to that calling as an early down player. And I question whether or not he has a long-term future in this defense.
And Miami had 4 drives that registered over 10 plays. That's just really incredible if you think about it. Again, based on what was going on. Like we said, you got a rookie quarterback. They have no weapons. And for at least the first half, you did have Samuel out there. You easily could have just put your 4 DBs and just said, okay, you guys, and maybe even, like you said, 8 in the box if you have to. Because look, if Tua was going to beat them through the air, then Tua was going to beat you through the air, and you go, okay, hey, if you can, I mean, really, who was out there at wide receiver for the Dolphins that could have realistically been an issue for the Patriots? Nobody. So I just didn't understand it.
Right, and I think that speaks to also just the lack of depth that the Patriots have in their front seven. Jawan Bentley went out in this game with an injury. John Simon went out in this game with an injury, and with already a stacked deck against them in terms of numbers in those linebacker and defensive line units, those are 2 starters that go down in the game. They just don't have the bodies there right now to fill in those places. So it's really Terez Hall, it's Jawan Bentley, it's Kyle Duggar and Adrian Phillips as safeties playing linebacker in the box. And teams over the last 2 weeks especially, but really all year long. I mean, this Patriots run defense is 28th in DVOA against the run. They're 27th in EPA per play. I mean, I can just rattle off all these stats that tell you how bad the Patriots run defense has really been all season long. This is not just a 1 or a 2 week problem, but these 2 weeks certainly exacerbate and highlight those problems as we head into the offseason. And I would put defensive front 7 personnel, upgrading that through the free agency and the draft, just as high as wide receiver or quarterback or tight end or any of the problems that they have on offense.
All right, let's go over the game now. Let's start with Harris. When did we know that he would not be available for the game?
I believe we knew the day before that he was not going to be active for this game, and it obviously opened the door for Sony Michel, who actually had a pretty good game.
Yeah, and I noticed too that even though he had a pretty good game, statistically speaking, like you said, it's like you looked at the stats and they ran the ball okay. So I wasn't sure exactly why things didn't work out. Was it a lack of running? Should they have run the ball more? Was it, okay, we got them off balance, but we just didn't hit it through the air that we needed to make the plays? What was that about?
It's actually just one of those weird games where really a microcosm of their entire season on offense. They moved the football on this Dolphins defense. They drove the ball inside Miami's 35 times in this game. They had plenty of opportunities to score. They averaged, Sony Michel averaged over 7 yards per carry. Yep, now, he only carried the ball 10 times. So maybe that is something that we can talk about.
Sure.
Was not exactly the best decision when he was running so well. But Cam Newton threw the ball 32 times and averaged 7.7 yards per attempt, which in this season is a really good number for Cam Newton by his standards, though, that they've been setting. A much more efficient passing attack between the 20s. But the problem is, and I wrote this down in my film review today, is that the Patriots get inside that 30-yard line and when the scoring zone is what I would call it, right? Because nowadays in the NFL, it's not just the red zone where teams try to score from. Once you get inside the 30, you see a lot of teams start to take shots to the end zone at that point because they just want to avoid being inside the 10
Yeah,
altogether because it's
sure.
such a tough place to score with such a condensed area unless you can really run the football. So they like to take shots, 25-yard line, 26-yard line, 27-yard line, somewhere around there. The Patriots will start dialing up plays towards the end zone, like most teams. And the Patriots had 3 or 4 opportunities. I would call it 3 clean opportunities and one where I could understand Cam's process. It just didn't work out, and it didn't end up being the best option or the best read once you let the play unfold. But he didn't know that at the time when he threw the football. I would call it 4 plays where they had opportunities to continue to move the chains and continue to move towards the end zone. Some of them were throws into the end zone, the Jacoby Myers play that we also have queued up.
Yep.
Those are a lot of examples there of, hey, that's the game in a lot of situations, right? You get 3 or 4 shots in a game to drive the ball down the field and get it into the end zone. And if the quarterback consistently does not make those throws and does not make those reads, then you don't score any points. And the Patriots kicked 4 field goals in this game because they couldn't get the ball in the end zone.
And there was another point late in the game. It was, let's see, first they get the 3rd and 15 completion to Bird, pick up 25 to the Miami 46.
Great play.
Yep. And this is when they were down 15-9. So a touchdown, they take the lead. Then comes one of those plays where you're just sitting there and you're going, what did I just see? 3rd and 4, and it didn't look to me like Cam, I got to get rid of the ball fast. I got pressure on me. I had nowhere else to go here. It was like, this is where I want to go. Oh, I guess I didn't throw it where it needed to go. And he threw the ball towards the end zone to Dalton Keene.
Yeah, this definitely speaks to, I try to say that phrase a lot today because there's so many like microcosms of their season packed into this one game. Dalton Keene's not Travis Kelce. He's not Darren Waller. He's not Rob Gronkowski, right? So he's not the best tight end in the league. He's a rookie that's definitely learning and has a long way to go before he's going to be a productive NFL player. The problem is that in that situation, the Dolphins closed the middle of the field down. They had a zone defender in the short area of the field, and then they had a deep post safety on the play. And the one-on-one matchup for Cam Newton was Dalton Keene against Eric Rowe in the outside slot. Now, if you look at the way the Patriots aligned on that play, N'Keal Harry is in the inside slot against Nick Needham. So the Patriots schematically, their coaching staff, they moved N'Keal Harry all the way to the inside slot on a trip side of the formation to get him away from Xavier Howard and Byron Jones. That's where the Patriots coaching staff, I can't know for certain, but based off the fact that they put N'Keal Harry in there and they tried to get him that matchup, it suggests to me that that's really where they wanted the ball to go first. If he wasn't open, then you work it to Dalton Keene. Sure. Cam Newton decided that he was going to work the one-on-one matchup with Keene to begin with. And again, it speaks to the fact that they don't have a better tight end to be in that spot, to be in that matchup. But if you watch the play back, Cam kind of locks on to Dalton Keene in that one-on-one matchup. And if you watch Harry over the middle of the field, he actually wins on his post route and is open for a big play. But Cam has already thrown the ball to Dalton Keene up the seam. It wasn't a great throw. It wasn't a great route. It just wasn't a great play all around for both quarterback and tight end. And again, the coaching staff schemed up a situation to get N'Keal Harry a matchup on the inside. Yep. He won the matchup on the inside, and the ball just didn't go to him.
Early in the game, I think it was Charles Tillman did the game.
Yeah, Charles Davis.
Charles Davis. Yep. And there was that throw to Harry, the high throw. And Davis is there blaming Harry. I'm like, what? Why are you blaming Harry for that? Oh, well, I'm sure Harry would have liked to have gotten the, if you're going to be able to get your hands on the ball. Well, I don't know what the hell he was saying. But that was clearly another bad throw by Cam Newton. It had nothing to do with it. And especially, it was almost like, how these announcers, they spend a couple of days, they talk to the coaching staff, they get a feel for the media, they probably do some homework online, they want to know the pulse of what everybody's talking about. And you get the feeling that he subconsciously or not, knew how much of a a figurehead to whether it's the problems that the Patriots have had at receiver, whatever the case, that N'Keal Harry has not blossomed yet into the receiver that the Patriots and the fans would like him to blossom into. And he was trying to pick almost on N'Keal Harry instead of blaming the real guy, Cam Newton.
It's tough too because I posted yesterday on Twitter as well about N'Keal Harry, who I think is looking a whole lot better over the last couple of weeks, running routes with a lot more confidence, a lot crisper out of his breaks, and he is getting open. He's creating opportunities down the field. He's just not quite on the same page as Cam Newton yet, and Cam hasn't really been able to get him the football. On that particular play, N'Keal gets open on a back shoulder fade, right? He runs the fade route up the sideline. He separates at the top of the route with a nice move on the back shoulder, and he's looking for the ball on his back shoulder, and Cam throws it to his upfield shoulder, and he's got to adjust and then try to snag it one-handed. I said the same thing. Davis is on the broadcast blaming N'Keal for not being able to come up with like an Odell Beckham one-handed catch on the play. PFF gave N'Keal Harry a drop on that play, and I'm not sure I see it that way. These are throws that maybe you can make the argument it's technically catchable, right? It's in the air, it's in the vicinity, his hands got on it. Maybe it's technically catchable, but it's not accurate, right? It's not in the right spot. So N'Keal looks back for the back shoulder. It comes front shoulder, upfield shoulder. He's got to adjust to it, and he just couldn't adjust to it enough in time. And that was another one of the plays I broke down because that was a third down play in the scoring zone again, where if they move the chains there or if N'Keal Harry catches it there and breaks a tackle, I mean, who knows, right? Who knows what ends up happening? So the N'Keal Harry on the post, N'Keal Harry on the back shoulder fade, the Jacoby Myers play, I had you queue up. That one was another one where Jacoby Myers separates on the corner route, on Nick Needham again. He gets over the top of Needham on the corner route, and Cam's got 10, 15 yards of end zone to drop the ball in, and it almost hits the back stanchion of the end zone where the stands start. It's just not, the throw is just not even close. And I don't want to sit here and just completely lambaste Cam Newton because he did make a lot of individual plays that were great in this game that got the team down there into those situations, creating plays in the pocket. The 3rd and 15 throw you mentioned to Damiere Byrd was a great one. He connected with Jacoby Myers a few different times on some good plays, and Myers had over 100 receiving yards in this game. They did move the football, and Cam did make some good plays, but when it comes down to it, a lot of games, especially for an offense like the Patriots, where you're not producing 10, 15 of these opportunities a game, come down to 4 or 5 plays in the scoring zone where the quarterback has a throw to be made, and he either makes it or he doesn't make it. And this season, the Patriots are 27th in red zone scoring efficiency, and too many times Cam Newton has not made that big throw, that big time throw to get them in the end zone, to keep the chains moving, to get them closer to be able to maybe run it in or something like that. It just hasn't happened frequently enough.
If you look at it, Cam has had only 4 games this season of 200 yards plus. Only 4 all season. When he gets 200 yards or more, the team is 1-3, and his only win was the Jets.
Yeah,
and we talked about the Houston game being one of them, and how and again we stress the formula is obvious. You don't want Cam to throw the football. 2 reasons. One, he's never been an accurate passer. Never. He's a career 59% passer. 60% maybe, I think. 60.1 actually. The other one is the lack of depth of talent at the receiver position. So you have both things working against you in the passing game, which is why, as we started the show off with, if that's the case and you're running the ball effectively, you shouldn't be throwing the ball as much as you did in the game, considering you were having success running the ball.
Right. And Bill Belichick spoke a lot about the efficiency of the passing game, not necessarily the volume of the passing game last week, just the overall efficiency, because they are looking to throw it This game they threw it, he dropped back 32 times, but most games they're dropping back 20 to 25 times, right? That's sort of been the average here for
Yep.
Cam Newton down the stretch. And if they're only going to throw it 20 or 25 times, then you are only going to have 4 or 5 opportunities to make big plays down the field. And the Patriots are looking for Cam and the pass catchers to maximize those big plays. And unfortunately, that just hasn't happened. I mentioned all the plays in the scoring zone. There is also the Jacoby Myers fumble where Jacoby Myers should hold on to that football, right? But he's also crossing over the middle of the field, and Cam Newton throws it behind him instead of in front of him. So he's got to adjust back to the football. That gets the defenders trailing him, trying to run with him across the field back into the play, and Xavier Howard punches out the ball, and that's another drive that gets killed, right? On a play that was gained 20 yards up until that point, on a good productive play for the team. It's just 2 steps forward and 1 steps back often with this offense. And when you look at Cam's future, and I'm sure we're going to discuss this too, it's really about maximizing those 4 or 5 opportunities. Yep. And maybe that's not fair. Maybe he should have, 15 of those opportunities. Maybe if you turn on the Kansas City Chiefs tape or the Packers tape or something like that, and Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes have, 15 of these types of plays that we're breaking down, and Cam Newton has 5 or 6. But if he can't maximize those 5 or 6 plays, then they need to move on.
Well, let's talk about that then. And as we talk about it, I'm gonna pop up Cam's career stats, care of ProFootballReference.com, and what you see here is one big year, the Super Bowl year, right? 15 in 1 year. The year where he throws for 35 touchdown passes. What's interesting is, if you look at it, he never, besides that year, he never throws for more than 24 touchdown passes in any season. So I think because of, and he rushed for over 600 yards that year too, and he had 10 touchdowns. That, when I remember Cam Newton at Auburn, and I remember early Cam Newton, and even here, I mean, this was really the one before the 35 touchdowns. He was always more of a athlete, sort of like what we see with Lamar Jackson. Those guys, Kyler Murray, is that okay? Maybe he's not going to throw a ton of touchdown passes, but he's going to make, a lot of plays because he's a big guy. And because he's big, unlike Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson, he's going to be able to take the punishment for a while. So you felt good about it. Then the 35 touchdowns came out and you figured, wow, okay, maybe he's now ready to take that next step. He never did. He didn't have a good Super Bowl either against a great defense. Maybe that's really where it all ended for Cam on that Super Bowl Sunday. But that's the thing too, is as I point to 60.1% completion percentage for his career. That's what I always talk about with Josh Allen too, and players like this. You get quarterbacks that come out of college. Dan Shonka from our lads schooled me on this years ago. Bottom line is if you are never a consistent, accurate quarterback in college, you're not going to be one when you get to the NFL. That's just the way it's going to be. You're going to have to find other ways to be successful, like Josh Allen has. But Cam's never going to be that high, accurate guy. Throw in the fact that you don't have a lot of talent around him. It's a completely new system. I don't think it worked. I don't know. I if it's me, I'm moving on.
Yeah, and I think you're sort of, a lot of Patriots media and fans are right there with you. You turn on 98.5, the sports up here in Boston, and every single sports radio analyst in the city is saying anybody but Cam next year, right? Give me Tyrod Taylor. Give me Alex Smith. Give me Ryan.
I wouldn't go that crazy, but yeah.
Anybody but Cam. To me, unfortunately, or for, whatever way you want to look at it, Cam is sort of the bridge quarterback the Patriots need, even if it's not the bridge quarterback they necessarily want, right? And I think that's kind of where we're at with the situation, is that do you really want to overpay a Alex Smith or a Ryan Fitzpatrick or a Tyrod Taylor or whoever it may be to come in here and start anew in the same situation that Cam was basically coming into this season, where, you hope that the pass catchers are better. Well, we know Bill Belichick. Is he really going to go out there and pay Allen Robinson $20 million a year to improve the pass catchers? No, he's probably going to bring in a guy like a Tim Patrick or a Curtis Samuel or somebody like that that's in that second tier of free agent wide receivers. Maybe he would go after a Hunter Henry, or maybe he would draft a Kyle Pitts in the first round. But we're not talking about guys and Henry and Pitts right away, at least. You know, I
Sure.
think someday Pitts is going to be a star, but is he going to be an instant star? I mean, who knows, right?
And I'm glad you brought up tight end, because that's the other thing is, remember that year, that Super Bowl year, his number one target was Greg Olsen, who had
Yeah.
over 1,000 yards receiving. He doesn't have that with the Patriots. That's what he wants. He wants a tight end. Because he's not accurate, he needs to be able to throw the ball to tight ends, and he just can't do that.
Right. And I don't know, you know, if they have an immediate fix at tight end where there's going to be a guy that's going to come in and give him a Greg Olsen type of season, right? Those guys don't grow on trees.
No.
So it's not an easy thing to find. Go across the entire league. And yeah, there are the Darren Wallers and the Travis Kelce's and the George Kittles, but most teams are struggling at tight end right now. There's not a ton of depth there at that position. So I think the main thing that you look at is that let's just use Ryan Fitzpatrick as an example. You bring in Fitzpatrick, who has to learn an entire new system that is a very difficult system to learn by all, you know, kind of accounts. Then you're going to be integrating new weapons. Then you're going to be integrating young weapons, probably a rookie, maybe two rookies. N'Keal Harry is still, you know, a young player just in terms of game experience. He's only played 19 games in the NFL. Jacoby Myers, same sort of thing, second-year wide receiver. And you expect that team to be any better. Now, maybe it might be better for fans to watch. You know, maybe it won't be as much of a slog as it was this year with a quarterback that's marginally better than Cam Newton. But we're talking about with Fitzpatrick or Alex Smith or Tyrod Taylor or any of these guys, at most, a 1 or 2 win improvement in terms of what the offense is bringing to the table. Maybe the defense, you know, is much better next year and they're better than that. But we're not talking about a team that's all of a sudden going to the Super Bowl because they signed Ryan Fitzpatrick as
that didn't happen.
Cam Newton, right?
No.
So really, to me, the answer is that Cam, for currently, until they find a better escape route, a better strategy to get out of Cam Newton than Jared Stidham as sort of the long-term answer, Cam's kind of the guy they're stuck with in the short term right now. And I just wouldn't go out on a limb to sign somebody to more money for a whole brand new fresh start and think that you're going to get better results just because it's a different name than Cam Newton.
Well, who
right?
would that be? Who would it? I mean, is it basically Matthew Stafford? Is that it?
That's the thing is like if Bill Belichick is willing to hit a home run and trade for Matthew Stafford, or somehow, you know, Matt Ryan becomes available, or Dak Prescott gets out of Dallas for some remarkable reason, then that's one thing, right? That those are different tiers of quarterback, right? But to me, all the other free agent quarterbacks that are going to be available this offseason, they're all in the same lump them into the same tier as Cam Newton. And Cam's going to be cheaper than most of them, I bet, because the rest of the league right now is not very high on Cam Newton. You have executives coming out and saying, you know, sourced executives, obviously not by name, saying that Cam Newton's basically a running back playing quarterback at this stage of his career. There's not a ton of market out there for him. You could trade for a guy like a Derek Carr or a guy like a Carson Wentz, but does the Patriots really want to pay Derek Carr $25 million against the next year?
No.
They have way too many holes to do that, right? So Cam is probably going to cost them $5 or $6 million with it plus incentives, maybe at most. You bring him back. You let him start until the next guy sort of comes along. And I'm not talking about having him start for 3 or 5 seasons. I'm talking about him starting, you know, ideally for 3 or 5 games, right?
Well, so you think Cam would you think that Belichick and Cam would be that's the plan? You could see them both agreeing with it. We're going to bring you back. We're going to draft a quarterback in the first round, and the chances are, if we like that kid, he's going to be starting within month 2, and you're going to be okay with that.
My guess is that that's the most likely plan and the most likely outcome in this offseason is that the Patriots approach this situation with Cam Newton just like the Miami Dolphins approach the situation with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tua, right? Ryan Fitzpatrick is the veteran quarterback, the guy that they're going to start at the beginning of the season. You let the rookie hold the clipboard for a couple of months, and then when the time comes, you make the switch. And until the Patriots have a better option than Jared Stidham behind Cam Newton to make that switch too, I don't know what other options they really have besides to roll with Cam and hope that whoever they draft in the offseason is the answer, because again, unless you're going to hit a home run and you're going to go for Matthew Stafford,
sure.
or someone like that. I know a lot of Patriots fans are looking at Green Bay's quarterback situation and saying, Jordan Love, they took Jordan Love, how much longer is Aaron Rodgers really their answer there? Those are all great dream scenarios, right? Like we can go to
Aaron Rodgers,
that
yeah.
all we want, right?
Uh-huh.
It's not going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
most likely. The most likely outcome is that Cam comes back. He's the starter in week 1, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be the starter in week 16.
And you don't think that the way that Cam has got to, the way they have to run their offense with Cam is going to more than likely be very different than what the rookie is going to be running. You don't think that hurts the rookie's development?
I think it could a little bit in theory, but I also look at, what the Chiefs were doing with Alex Smith versus what they did with Patrick Mahomes. Now, I'm not saying the Patriots are going to draft the Patrick Mahomes. I'm just saying those two offenses are same foundation of the system, but completely different for the most part, right?
Okay.
In terms of what Mahomes is capable of doing and what Alex Smith is capable of doing as a thrower. So I think it could affect it, but also in the college game, a lot of these quarterbacks coming in now, a lot of these, Justin Fieldses and Trey Lances and Wilsons, and even a guy like a Kyle Trask, they're running systems down there in college that are not these traditional Earnhardt Perkins drop pack passing games like the Patriots have had over the last 20 years with Brady. So I would think the transition from a Cam Newton offense to an offense that, let's say, fits Trey Lance, for example,
he's the most similar Lance
right,
to Newton.
Probably a very easy transition compared to what it might be 20 years ago if they were drafting, somebody that was a little bit more pro style, more stationary pocket type of quarterback.
Yeah, because if you look at it, right now New England's 15th. So they're going to hang around there. And when you see 6 quarterbacks, that the Dolphins having Houston's pick, they don't need a quarterback. Bengals don't need a quarterback. Chargers don't need a quarterback. So, and I haven't looked at anybody else, but bottom line is, even if the Patriots stay at 15, they're going to be able to draft a quarterback. And if they need to move up a couple, down a couple to get their guy, and again, you're not going to get the second or third guy, but 4 through 6, you never know. I mean, look, as you mentioned, a couple of names already. Just because you end up with 4 or 5 in the pecking order doesn't mean that you're not getting the best quarterback. So it's just a matter of who do the Patriots like. And do you believe that Belichick will draft a quarterback in the first round this year?
Do I believe? That's a good question. I think my belief is that I'm leaning towards a quarterback early. I don't know if it's going to be a first round guy, but I would assume the Patriots are going to be picking a quarterback in the top 50 next year at some point.
Top 50.
It might be somebody like a Mac Jones or a Kyle Trask.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's if you're looking at an early second or you want to trade down a Mac Jones. That's a possibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have no idea where this Lance kid's going. I mean, I've looked at the tape myself, and I know this. Everybody's gaga over these quarterbacks sometimes. But I look at this kid and I go, top 5, top 10. I don't see that. I mean, so maybe once they really crunch the numbers on a kid like that, you start to see, well, maybe later first round, early second round. And I would assume a couple of those 6 quarterbacks that are coming out the top 6 are going to be available late first, second round.
Yeah, and I think the Patriots will either have the opportunity to trade down to a better position, or even, kind of package some things together to get another pick in that like 30 to 40 range, because they have a couple of veteran trade chips, I think, that might be useful in that regard, like a Stephon Gilmore, for example, where maybe they end up flipping Gilmore for the 33rd pick in the draft and they pick Kyle Trask with the 33rd pick in the draft, some sort of scenario like that. But I think the main thing that you look at with Belichick is that he's got all this cap space going into next year, and he's got a whole lot more to worry about than just quarterback. We talk a ton about the quarterback, and rightfully so. It's a very important position, but he's got defensive liabilities in the front 7. He's got Damiere Byrd and Jacoby Myers as his number 1 options on offense. He's got a lot of issues on this team and a lot of holes on this team right now. And you have to look at plugging all of them and what's the best sort of allocation of that cap space and of those resources. And to me, the best possible scenario is Cam on the cheap, a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract. That is not spending a ton of money on the quarterback position.
Yeah.
And then you build up the roster around the quarterback for the next year or two, and then you hope that the guy that you draft is the answer for the long term, and you can just plug and play him when he's ready, and you hit the ground running, like a lot of teams have recently.
And if you do look, and there's no question that the Patriots, especially if they do keep Cam, already based on the talent they have to use an early draft pick on a tight end. It might even be their first pick, and then they use up their maybe if they do trade down and they accumulate a second early pick, that kind of thing. You know, as you mentioned, having the tight end position be a position of need, but the good thing is there are 2 or 3 really good tight ends coming out.
Yeah, this is a good tight end class.
Yeah, it's a really good tight end class. So if you do trade down and get that extra pick, you could come away with one of the top tight ends and a quarterback, which makes a lot of sense if you know how the New England Patriots want to do things. That'll make Cam's life easier as well if he does come back. And obviously, you got to add in a receiver at some point, preferably a veteran. You know, not the big money veteran like you mentioned, but preferably a veteran because we've seen how the Patriots have fared using their draft capital on receivers.
It's a scenario where it's so difficult to picture another quarterback that isn't, an Aaron Rodgers or Matthew Stafford or somebody of that sort of top 10 tier coming into the system that the Patriots have in place now with the pass catchers that they have now. Let's even say they go out in the offseason and they add a Corey Davis and Kyle Pitts in the draft, right? That's the best case scenario. That's a home run type of offseason for New England. No matter who the quarterback is outside of that, select group of elite guys, whether it's Cam, whether it's Alex Smith, whether it's Ryan Fitzpatrick, whether it's Kyle Trask, they're not going to succeed. They're not going to succeed.
Absolutely.
So the best thing that they can do for that young quarterback, whoever it ends up being, is work up this offensive roster around them. I think with Myers and Bird and Harry, they have a fine 2 through 4 on their depth chart. They're missing the number 1 guy.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely. And a tight end. Yeah.
Right. So those guys, I think, are complementary pieces. They're fine in that type of role. If Myers is like your third option in your passing game, then that's fine. You know, he's a solid receiver. That's totally fine. He just can't be one. And that's where he's at right now. So going out this offseason and making sure that those guys are lower on the totem pole has got to be a top priority as well.
What about the 2 offensive linemen, Tooney and Andrews?
That offensive line has a lot of talent and a lot of depth there as well, but it's an offensive line that's going to be sort of in flux, I think, for them in the offseason in terms of what happens with those 2 guys. I would assume the most likely scenario is that David Andrews gets re-signed. He's probably not going to be anywhere near the level of price tag that Joe Tooney is going to. Joe Tooney could make $15-16 million a year on the open market. He's that good of a player and a very guy that's the Patriots had to franchise tag him because they knew that they were going to lose him if they didn't. So I would say that Tooney probably walks. That probably moves Michael Onwenu to his more natural position of guard on the interior, and you go with Wynn, Michael Onwenu, David Andrews, Shaq Mason, and in the right tackle position's a little bit of a question mark. They started rookie Justin Herron at left tackle against the Dolphins. He gave up a sack. He wasn't perfect, but he has shown some ability and some things that they do like. He's got great feet, good athleticism, so maybe he's ends up being an answer at one of the tackle spots. And, that's definitely a need to, in the draft, I would say more so that in the free agency market is getting another, top 100 type of pick at tackle. I think would really help them out a lot because I don't know how much you can really count on Isaiah Wynn at this point. To stay healthy and stay productive. It just hasn't all come together for Wynn. He's great when he's out there. He's really sturdy when he plays, but he just hasn't been able to stay healthy.
And the way the Patriots are right now with their offense, they need to ensure that offensive line remains a strength. It has to, because they don't have to do a whole lot to ensure it's still their strength. The other things they have to do is going to take a lot, whether picks or money, whatever. There's a lot of work to be done there, but there's no reason to screw around with the offensive line. Again, like you said, if you lose Tooney, you lose Tooney, but it happens. You move it, like you said, you move Onwenu in, and then you make sure that you add some additional depth, and you still should be okay, all things considering, because the offensive line has got to be the strength again for this team, at least for a couple more years. Does that mean that you think Cam Newton will or should start the next 2 weeks?
I think he will, and at least against the Bills in Week 16, I think Jared Stidham's got a chance to start that Week 17 game against the Jets. I'm really fascinated to see what's on the line in that Week 17 game against the Jets. Right, they're going for the number one pick. If they lose and the Jaguars, win a game or something like that here in the last couple of weeks, that changes a lot. I think of how that game is going to be played by both teams. Right, so that's a big sort of question of whether or not Cam's continue to start. I think they do start him against Buffalo because again, I still think the most likely scenario is that week 1, 2021, where it's talking about Cam Newton as the starting quarterback for the Patriots. So,
and that's a good sign then, if he starts this week, whether he starts or not, week 17, that more than likely the Patriots are thinking this is the guy we want back. Because if you weren't thinking of bringing him back and you still weren't sure what you had in Stidham, then why would you start him this week? Why wouldn't you just put Stidham in there?
Stidham's not the guy.
Yeah.
They've made that abundantly clear. They've said it privately. They've said it publicly without actually coming out and saying it by not playing him. There was a point in time this season recently where Cam Newton has just been awful, right? Just really, really not a good quarterback. If they thought Stidham was any sort of upgrade, he would be playing. He'd be playing. And Bill Belichick time and time again has said, Josh McDaniels has said Cam Newton has been our best answer at quarterback since the beginning of the season. They don't believe in Stidham. I don't think he has sort of that killer instinct.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not a Stidham
quarterback position. He's a little bit too laissez with it. He didn't come into camp and wasn't like super eager to win the job, right? And they want a guy like Brady who's like, I'm the best decision you've ever made, and I'm going to be starting on this team in a year, right? That's what they want out of Jared Stidham, and they just haven't really seen that.
And I'm going to continue to bring up this name between now and the draft. Once you get past those top 6 guys, if you want your next diamond in the rough, once you get to the 4th and 5th round, and a guy that if he lands in the right space like Minshew and maybe he gets lucky and he could start and he can try to prove himself, that guy is De'Ara King.
Yeah.
I know he's small. I get it. But if he can somehow measure a little close to Kyler Murray, then I don't want to hear it. That means, I'm not saying he's Kyler Murray. It just means that if Kyler Murray can be the first pick in the draft, that means Derek King can play in the league. And I think Derek King can play in the league. So I just want to make sure he's not, incredibly small, which I don't think he is.
It's a great question though about the Patriots' kind of preferences when it comes to those sort of things, because in the past they've actually been a team, especially at the quarterback position, that likes big quarterbacks. Tom Brady's 6'5".
Yep.
Cam Newton is a house. He's 6'6", 250. Jared Stidham is a 6'4", 6'5" type of guy. Ryan Mallett. I can go right on the list of all of the quarterbacks that they've. Jimmy Garoppolo is a well built dude.
Yeah.
Might not be the most durable, but he's well built. And you look at all these guys, and they're not usually the team that kind of breaks that threshold at the quarterback position. And Zach Wilson's one name in the first round. I'm really fascinated to see how he measures out in the combine in a couple of months, because if he's at more closer to like 6'1", 6'2", and he's got small hands and all that type of stuff, I don't see it for them in the first round. As much as I like him as a prospect, and I think he's kind of, Baker Mayfield-ish, I just don't think that they're going to go for that in a first-round prospect. I could be totally wrong, but it just, based off of their track record, their sort of dream quarterback, believe it or not, is like a guy like Justin Herbert, right? 6'6", 220 pounds, big guy, big arm. That's sort of what they've always looked at that position.
Well, and I agree with you. I think Zach's on the small side too. I mean, I know he's measured right now at 6'2". I don't know. I don't think he's 6'2". So we'll see about that. It doesn't mean he's not going to be a good quarterback. I think he will be, but whether he fits with the Pats, that's probably not the case.
They have a type at that position. Other positions like left tackle Isaiah Wynn, they don't care, right? He's an undersized tackle. We're taking him anyway just because of how skilled he is. But at the quarterback position, they've routinely kind of stuck to guys that are bigger, that meet those height, weight, hand size type of thresholds.
Evan, great job as always. We'll talk a couple more times, and then we will also talk a few times during the off season, because who knows what's going to happen this offseason with COVID and all. It's like a dirty word. I don't even like using it. But bottom line is, this is going to be the biggest offseason the Patriots have had in a long time, since they haven't been in the playoffs and they get a better pick. So I'm going to look forward to talking to you a lot about free agency and the draft. But we still have a couple more weeks to go, including the Buffalo Bills this week. So we'll talk more about that game, and we'll find out about Cam Newton, Jarrett Stidham, and the rest of them when we talk next week.
Sounds good, Greg.